You're listening to the Business Marketing Show, episode number 77. You can find us at businessmarketingshow.com on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. Hi everyone, this is Keay-Smith here with my co-host Brendan Tully. Welcome to another episode of the Business Marketing Show. We're very excited to have a guest on the show today, Duc Pham from Perth Business Network, .net.au. That's where you can find him. And we're very happy to have Duc to come on the show today to discuss the power of networking for your business. Even though we're a digital marketing agency and we typically work with clients to bring in business via the internet, we still strongly believe that probably one of the best forms of marketing is person-to-person networking. So Duc has a long history of various roles he's played, and he's got his Bachelor of Business and his MBA, so he's had some corporate experience, and he was living in Melbourne for a while, for the last 2.5 years, originally raised in Perth and born in Vietnam. So now he's back living in Perth with his family, and he's set up Perth Business Network. It's something that's a passion of his. So we thought great time to get him on the show. So welcome, Duc, and thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Ed. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
So, Duc, I was introduced to you initially through my wife. I think Lois has introduced me to everybody that I know. I don't think I would have any friends if it wasn't for Lois, other than maybe Brendan. Brendan, I was never introduced to Brendan via Lois. But I'm only kidding, of course. But she has connected me with a lot of people because she's a very, very good networker herself. And she said, you should speak to Duc. He's setting up this really good networking business in Perth, and it's attracting some attention. So we had a coffee meeting, and it's gone from there. And now I'm a member, and it's going great. So Duc, we like to go back a little bit because obviously, you've had history, you've done different things, you've had different jobs, you've been and lived in different places. So let's go back to the early days of when you're a child and you were growing up in Vietnam. Let's start there. Way back.
You're testing my memory. Yeah.
Way back.
Look, I guess my father was involved in the Vietnam War. He was helping the Australians and Americans fight the North Vietnamese communists.
Mm-hmm.
So after the war, my father left Vietnam on a boat.
Right.
And he ended up in America and subsequently Perth and Broome up north, where he was a pearl diver.
Ah, fantastic.
And so that's not many people know that about me. But he eventually settled back in Perth shortly thereafter, and then he applied to sponsor myself and my family, the rest of my family over. But we actually decided to follow him, and we left Vietnam on a boat as well. For a harrowing journey, and we actually ended up being caught by pirates, believe it or not. And
far out. How old were you at the time?
I was probably 4, but it was so traumatic that I remember. I have some key memories of the whole event. So the pirates, thank God, the pirates, didn't get rid of us. Instead, they just took all our jewelry and I guess delivered us to a Malaysian refugee camp, where we stayed for about 12 months before we were sponsored over to Perth.
Wow! And what year was that in, Duc?
That was in the early 1980s, and if you talk to a lot of Vietnamese people around my age and my generation, a lot of them would have gone through a very similar experience.
Yeah, well, I think I've mentioned to you before, a good friend of mine growing up in through primary school, Duc Pham, he came across very similar circumstances, and this is back in the mid to late 1970s.
Yep.
And yeah, he'd gone, his whole family had been right through a lot of the Vietnam War experience, and were coming off the tail end of that. It was pretty horrific, some of the things he would say. So,
Yep.
but I think there's got to be a part of that experience that gives you some type of determination or a different view on what people consider to be difficult. There's a lot of people in Perth who think things are difficult, but they really have no idea what difficult is. Me included. I've never experienced that type of hardship, so I can only see it through other people's eyes, like yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I think you hit the nail on the head there, Ed, because ultimately, when at times in my life where I think I'm going through a rough patch, I guess I just draw strength when I remember what I've been through, and the ups and downs that you get in your life. It kind of puts it into perspective, into what's, like you said, what's difficult and what's just a temporary setback.
Yeah.
But I do draw a lot of strength through the fact that I've been through far much worse.
Yeah, and that's a great thing to get across to people, I think, because we do have a lot of people who seem to think things are difficult, and particularly in business, they get some roadblocks and speed bumps thrown in front of them, and they say it's all too hard, but it's really not that hard. So you've gone through that. Now you're living in Perth, and you're growing up. And what schools did you go to in Perth?
Yeah, I went to. My parents obviously worked very hard, both of them. But I went to a private Catholic school, and thoroughly enjoyed the experience. We're pretty fortunate. Our parents were of the mindset that education, from the first day we came to Australia, they were of the mindset that education is the most important thing. So they worked their backsides off to make sure that we attended, a very good school, to give ourselves the best chance in a new country.
Yeah, fantastic. And that seems to be a very common thread from people who have come through from immigration circumstances, and my parents the same. So you went through primary school, high school, and you went off to Edith Cowan University, and that's where you did your Bachelor of Business. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. I guess I did. The reason why I did Bachelor of Business because at that point in time I knew that I wasn't 100% sure exactly what my passion and exactly what I wanted to do. So I thought, it'd be a good starting point just to do Bachelor of Business because it's so broad. And in hindsight, it's a great move because I had a double degree in accounting finance, and that basically just opens up the whole business world up to you in terms of what sort of jobs you can get.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no shortage of need for those types of skills in this day and age, I believe. So that was good. So that was fortuitous, and some good planning on your behalf. We'll give you the credit for that one. And then you were working with some companies after that. Is that correct? So you left uni and went straight into working?
Yeah, that's right. I did. I started my my career off in accounting roles. I guess in retrospect, it was probably not the right thing to do for me because ultimately I don't have the head for details, and I'm not the sort of person who enjoys sitting at a table number crunching all day.
Yeah.
But it was, I guess it was a good foundation in the sense that it allowed me to get my head around numbers and to read financial statements and look and understand budgets and financial reports. So once again, although I didn't exactly was 100% passionate about it, it was a good foundation for me in the terms of my future ambitions.
Yeah, and it is interesting. We have this conversation a lot with guests on the show where certain experiences or jobs or education sometimes at the time that they were doing them didn't feel the right thing or wasn't in line with what they were trying to do, but ultimately has paved the way and helped cement the point at where they're at now. And without those experiences, it wouldn't have brought them to what they're doing currently. So it's interesting. That seems to be a common thread through a lot of people I speak to and who are on the show. So, you worked for a while. You were had a role as a channel sales manager for Bupa International. So that's a health insurance company. Is that correct, Bupa?
Yes, that's right. Look, when I guess I went into the banking industry and worked for St. George during the global financial crisis.
Right.
And
interesting times.
From 2008 to 2011, and that was a really tough time. And during that period, I was also doing part-time studies of my MBA, specializing in international business at ECU. What I discovered was that I needed a break from being in the bank after 3 years, but I also really enjoyed my studies. So I took a year off to finish my MBA, and shortly thereafter, I got the role at Bupa. I guess looking after the overseas visitors health cover channel for WA and SA.
Okay.
And it was fantastic experience working for a multinational company, helping them set up a greenfield business division in Australia. So, one of the defining roles in my career.
And was that the time that you moved to Melbourne to do that? You moved from Perth to Melbourne to do that role?
No, I was looking after Western Australia and South Australia, so I was still in Perth.
You were still here, okay.
After 3 years, I guess I wanted to, step out my comfort zone, challenge myself, and develop myself personally. Because I felt I've been living in Perth for so long, and I was too comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I made the decision with my wife to head over to Melbourne.
And why Melbourne? What was the attraction to going to Melbourne?
Oh, look, I guess it was pretty easy from this perspective that it was the best city in the world to live. And I've been to Melbourne for work on numerous occasions, and I just felt a real strong connection and affinity to the city.
Mm-hmm.
But and I applied for a role over there, and subsequently got the job and relocated to Melbourne. But Melbourne, I guess for me was very, very exciting because it was just so multicultural, so progressive, open-minded, and there's something for everyone.
Yeah, totally agree. Love Melbourne. I'm actually going to be there in a couple of weeks' time for a bit of a break. So I've got family over there as well. So yeah, it's a great place. And but you decided that you wanted to come back for family reasons back to Perth, and you've got how many children? You've got 2 or 3?
We got two kids. When we went to Melbourne, we only had Theo, who's 4 right now, and we subsequently had Tori, spelled with an I in the end, which is actually short for Victoria. So we had Tori in Victoria, and so her name's got a lot of meaning for us. We decided after 2.5 years to come back because Theo goes to kindergarten next year, and we had to make the decision whether to stay in Melbourne forever, because it's not good to uproot your kids once they become entrenched in a school and education system.
Yeah.
And we had obviously family and friends back in Perth, so we made the decision to come back to Perth. But absolutely, loved Melbourne. Could have stayed there for a very long time.
And you can always go back later on. That's the thing.
That's right. That's right.
So you're here in Perth again, back to the good old homeland of where you grew up, and you have been inspired to follow your passion and set up Perth Business Network. So what's the backstory with that? What drove you to set up this company?
Yeah, look, I guess in the last, 6 to 8 years, my roles have predominantly been in business development, relationship management, and account management roles. And I thought before I came back to Perth, I kind of sat down and thought, okay, I wanted to try to work for myself, but I knew that I only would do it if I had a chance to create something pretty special. And to create something special, it requires passion, purpose, and perseverance.
Definitely.
One of the few things I learned in my MBA that I can remember.
Well, that's good.
So
that's something.
Yeah, well, it's been great. The thing is, I thought my passion up to that point was sales and business development, because what I love about that is the hunt, the hunt and subsequent acquisition of a new prospect. But I found out that what I enjoy connecting people more than that. So that the day that discovery happened, I guess in terms of setting up the business, it made it very easy. So that was the passion sorted. The purpose was, in Melbourne, I saw how industries were thriving and they weren't dependent on one industry like mining.
Yeah.
And I thought, if I come back to Perth, how can I replicate this environment in Perth? And so to do that, I had to create a platform where businesses can come on board and I can exert influence within my sphere of control. And that, in essence, was why I created Perth Business Network.
Fantastic. And as I mentioned before, disclaimer, I am a member, but that is not the reason I'm doing it. I just think this is an important topic regardless. Yep. So ultimately, the main goal of Perth Business Network is what?
Well, there's a couple of goals. Firstly, I like aside from the networking events that we run for our members and sponsors, I like people to think of us as an introduction agency for like-minded business owners.
Uh-huh.
So I guess, and that happens on a daily basis, and that's probably one of the key areas where our members get the return on investment. So, we have a list of a list of criteria we want to see in prospective members, and if they are of the same quality and mindset, then when you introduce them to each other, it's easy for them to build relationships because they're all on the same wavelength, and they're all very professional, progressive, and engaged. Mm-hmm. So I guess setting that, I guess the for lack of a better word, the barriers to entry up, to make sure that the business owners who come on board are of a high quality, has worked really well, because what's happening is when you get them into a room, they're building solid relationships first and then doing business with each other subsequently. But the whole process is much easier when they're all like-minded. Definitely.
I've been to a lot of networking events, joined a few business networking type organisations, and quite often there seems to be quite a large gap between some of the members and what they do, and not a lot of similarities or common experiences. So, in terms of how you're selecting people, or getting in front of people, what are the main criteria you're looking for members?
Yeah, look, I guess in Melbourne, I discovered my passion for connecting people, but something else that I learned to embrace was innovation. So, I thought I'll make that one of the criteria. And what we're looking for is we want to work with companies that are innovative, or at least have a desire and capacity to do so. Mm-hmm. And similar to that, we were looking for companies that are challenging the status quo and pursuing best practice.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned before, we want to work with professional, progressive, engaged, open-minded, forward-thinking business owners.
So why did you let me join them?
It was through your wife. She put in a good word for you.
Is that it? Because if Brendan, he would have told you no, wouldn't you, Brendan? You would have said, don't let Ed join.
Oh, I'm nice, Ed. I wouldn't say that.
No, you would have said that. You would have said that. Sorry to continue. But look,
no, you've been a great addition to the membership, Ed.
Well, thank you. I'll pay you later for that lovely statement.
But I only take cash.
You only take cash. We do have a very exciting, and this is an example. As I say, I'm not being paid or sponsored to do this. So I'm doing this because I think it's a good thing. Just to be very clear, yep. I have. Other than being a member, I have no financial, monetary, any type of reward from Duc for this. So just want to be very clear there. But we've got...
I can't afford to pay you, Ed.
Well, I'm sure you could. I come cheap sometimes. But we've got a BMW Drive Day, because one of the couple of sponsors of the Perth Business Network are BMW dealerships. And that's Auto Classic and West Coast BMW, and they are hosting members on a drive day next week, about 170 Ks and some lunch and dinner, and it should be a fun day out. So these are the types of things where you can't really put a value on it, because you get to spend longer periods of time with members in a more casual environment. And to me, that's often where the gold happens. It's not necessarily at the functions in terms of, your normal networking meetings. It's what happens outside. Like you go and have a coffee with the person you've met at the network meeting, or, you get to spend time driving around in a car with some of them. These are the places, in my opinion, that all of the good stuff happens. Would you think that's accurate?
Yes, and I would like to add on to that. What I encourage our members to do is obviously build relationships before talking about any business that they can do together. But on top of that, when they're building relationships, I like to think that they're approaching that relationship from a giving perspective rather than a take perspective and what's in it for me. So that's having for me, that's a short-term outlook.
Definitely.
And if you approach a relationship from a given perspective with a long-term outlook, then in the long run, I think greater opportunities will arise.
Yeah,
definitely. So, Brendan, what's your view on networking? I mean, Brendan's.
Well, I'm very jealous of the BMW Drive Day.
Well, if you come over to Perth, I'm sure we could fit you in the boot somewhere, or I'm sure there'd be. Brendan's a really big dude. I don't think you'd have to be a big SUV to stick him in the back, because he's like a couple inches taller than me and a couple inches wider. So in terms of networking, because Brendan's just moved back into Australia. He's living in Queensland now, and had spent a fair amount of time in Thailand previous to that. So one of the things we get asked all the time is, how to increase business, how to get more traffic to a website, how to improve SEO, can you do Google AdWords or Facebook ads, all this sort of stuff. That's the typical stuff I get thrown at me a lot. and particularly from new businesses when they say, how can I start generating awareness and attention? And they're also focused on everything that's digital. I say, well, why don't you go out and start doing some networking and actually meeting some human beings at some events and getting started that way. So Brendan, now that you've just moved country and you're back in Queensland, is that something that you're looking at doing?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. I mean, you asked before what my thoughts on networking were. The traditional networking is where people go to network and play the ninja game with business cards and try and give away as many as possible. That's always been really frightening to me. I'm a member of a different networking group, and I had for at least, I think I've been a member for at least 5 years, and it really is like you said, Ed, like those casual, the relationships are made in those casual settings. It's not, I think if you go out with the goal to network with people, it can be a big time waster, and it's not a great experience. In relation to what you said about we get it too with the new business owner who, if they could only rank at the top of Google, they'd be rich kind of thing. But at the end of the day, we've talked on other episodes that there's really no online or offline anymore. It's all just marketing and sales. And even in the SEO space, in the ranking in Google space, the number one search term you can rank for is your business name, which a lot of businesses don't. And that's because this in-person stuff and referrals and like this person-to-person relationship stuff is so powerful. That's, for most businesses, like referral is going to be one of the top 3 drivers of sales. And I think I don't want to use the word networking. For me, it has kind of negative connotations, but meeting people and building relationships and meeting other people in expanding your business network, I guess. Like me and you, Ed, it has been nearly 10 years we've known each other and done a lot of business together, and we met through somebody else effectively through that kind of relationship building and those in-person relationships, even though most of the stuff we do is online and we rarely see each other in person. So I'm really jealous of the drive day, and it is now I'm back in Australia. So I've been back for a month, and I've been doing a lot of traveling around the world, and one thing I've missed is like a lot of that in-person stuff and the ability to make build relationships with other businesses, and it's not necessarily for the default thinking is I can find customers, but it's actually, for me, the more powerful bit is like meeting like someone like you that we've worked together for so long now that we help each other out, we support each other and share ideas, and work together like with the podcast. So I think there's a mistake just to think it's about getting customers. I think building business relationships that you can do things with is really important, and a key part of like building a sustainable business. So
well said.
So I look, I totally agree with you, Brendan, on many levels there. I think networking events where you're like a ninja flicking out business cards, to be honest with you, that's probably comes down to speed networking, and for me, that's never going to work for me, and a lot of my members, we don't do that. I guess at a networking event, I only give out my business cards when I'm asked for it.
Yes,
but also I'm very, very strategic. There's probably only every networking event I go to, there's probably only 1 or 2 people that I would subsequently, I guess, connect with and have a catch-up coffee with.
Yeah.
Whether that be for business or personal reasons, I'll make that judgment call on that day. Mm-hmm. But I think that word networking, I'm using it right now, but for lack of a better word, but you're right. There's positive and negative connotations with that word. I'm obviously operating and trying to encourage the positive side of things.
Yeah, too true. And look, I was just at a speed networking event only last week, and there was about 100 and something people at it, and it was brutal. That's the only way to describe it. It was
Yep.
exhausting. And after the whole process, you go, what really was the outcome of that? I mean, because you had 2 minutes, where 1 minute each person to talk, and people are just doing elevator pitches and doing stuff that's everyone switches off after a while, and there's nothing meaningful there at all.
Yeah, I went to a similar one about a year ago, and I swore that I would never do something like that again.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I don't know. I hadn't done one. Look, the last speed business thing I'd done was probably, 15 years ago. So I think I had forgotten. I think my mind had let it go a little bit that it wasn't terrible. But then after being reminded of it last week, it was like, yeah. Fortunately, the next day I went to Margaret River for 4 days, so I could recover and relax from the stressful experience. Yep. But already I had people calling me up and trying to pitch me stuff the very next day, and I'm going, hang on a second, we've spoken for like 1 minute, and now you're trying to sell me your wares. I mean, that's not how it works. And I'm exactly like you. If I come away from a networking event and I've made connection with 2 or 3 people, that's fine. But you do see, as you know, the throwing star ninja card people going around. Here's my card. Here's my card. They do not understand what networking is, and so that was the main reason I wanted to have this conversation with you, is to impart this to people. That is not how you network. It's about a quality interaction with a small number of people. It's not about getting your card around to as many people as possible in the room. That you'll be remembered, but not how you want to be.
That's right.
They'll probably throw your business card in the bin as soon as they walk out the door.
Yep.
So other tips for networking, because people who listen to this, there's a lot of people who obviously are not in Perth. We've got people listening to it in other parts of the country and overseas. So what is it that you recommend in looking for someone to go along and either join or maybe just experiment with?
Well, it's very, I guess for me, it's very simple. When I meet with prospective members, I actually tell them to, aside from looking to join our network, to review all the other stuff in the market, and be strategic about it, because your time's precious. And so do your due diligence and only join if you see value in it for you. Yeah. And I guess that's probably the most important thing for me is don't jump into it. Do your due diligence, review the sort of members that are coming on board. Look at all the marketing material. Obviously, do your social media research, because membership can obviously vary quite a lot. And the last thing you want to do is burn your money and waste your time. So be strategic and do your due diligence. Yeah,
very wise advice. And of course, the other thing about networking is this is going to be a real shock to people, but you actually have to turn up to them. If you don't turn up, you've got zero chance of making any meaningful connections. If you stay at home and go, oh, no, I don't think I'll bother going to that. And I can trace back to a lot of very, very good things that have happened both personally, professionally, income-wise from going to networking events. So I highly believe that the whole reason I'm actually connected with Brendan is because of a very fleeting referral at a networking event that led to me calling a wrong number, where I ended up speaking to Lisa Reed, who connected Brendan and I and several other people for doing workshops. And that was me calling a wrong number because I couldn't find the right number of the person I was referred to. So funny story, but that whole thing, that tenuous of threads, most tenuous of threads, has led to lots of really good stuff down the path. But if I hadn't turned up to go to the networking event and actually put myself in that, sometimes with a lot of people, it's a very uncomfortable position, having to stand there and talk about themselves. But my recommendation about networking is you don't have to be good at talking about yourself. You just have to be good at asking questions. If you get good at asking the other person about themselves, they're going to remember you far more because you're interested in them genuinely than if you're just standing there talking about yourself. And I'm sure that's probably what you've experienced as well.
Yes, great advice there, Ed. Look, when I meet with people, my objective is to do the least amount of talking as possible, because I want to listen to them. I want to hear their story. I want to hear their journey. I want to hear about their business, and it gives me the time that they talk gives me greater insight into what they're all about, and I can ascertain then whether they'll see value in joining my organization.
Yeah, fantastic. Yep. So we've been chatting now for 35 odd minutes, so we're getting close to the end of our time. So what last parting words of wisdom do you have for people who haven't done any networking at all? They're sitting thinking, oh, I'm too scared, or they're not confident enough in what they're doing. What do you offer and recommend to those people?
Yeah, look, I think you touch on this, but networking can be very daunting for people who haven't done much of it. And the thing is, don't jump straight into it. There's no shortage of networking events throughout the Perth landscape. And a lot of them are for free. So do check out these networking events, and if you see one that tickles your fancy, then I would suggest just this is not many people do this, but give the organizer a call and have a chat to them about the sort of people who attend these events. And I've done that on most occasions, and I can quickly make up my mind whether it's the right event for me. And then you're saving a lot of time and energy. So the one piece of advice I would say is if you're unsure in terms of who's turning up, give the organizer a call.
Good advice. That's very good advice. And that way you can scope out whether it's going to be for you or not. So very cool. I have never done that. So I will put that in my bag of tricks now. Thank you, Duc. Anything you have to ask Duc before we finish up, Mr. Brendan?
Not really, but there was a point you made before, just about the common values. I think is really important for joining groups like these. Like, because over the years I've joined different groups, and you really have to have those shared or common values to really feel like you belong, for starters, and to get something out of it. Like you said, if you're scared to go to the networking events, then it's probably not going to work out that well for you. But if you're meeting people that are like you and they do things that that come from a similar place, then you're probably going to get much more value out of the networking group and the time you're putting into it as well.
Yeah,
that's right.
Too true. So again, Duc, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. We were actually set up to do this many weeks ago, but I got sick and had to cancel it, unfortunately, and put it off to now. So thanks for being patient. We greatly appreciate your input, and I think there's a lot of people who will benefit who have been thinking about getting into a networking experience and maybe joining a networking group or something of that nature. Whether it's here in Perth or in Melbourne or San Francisco or wherever, it doesn't really matter. It's a universal principle, and they can maybe start taking those steps to sort of move into that area. So what's the best way for people to get in touch with you, Duc? We'll put this in the show notes, but your web address?
Well, look, firstly, thank you for having me on board and for your insightful comments and questions.
You're welcome.
The best way for people to contact me is on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I accept 99% of LinkedIn invites, so please do to connect with me on LinkedIn and send me a message if you want to catch up.
Fantastic. We'll also list your website details as well in the show notes, which I'll just repeat again, perthbusinessnetwork.net.au for those who want to go and check it out. If you live in Perth, you don't offer anything over in the eastern states. That may happen sometime down the track, Duc, but you never know. But
yes,
but right now you're it's only based in Perth. So if you're a Perth listener, most certainly check it out, and we may end up seeing you at one of the future events. So thank you, Brendan, for your time as usual, and thanks once again to Duc.
Thank you, Ed and Brendan. It's nice talking to you, and I'll see you around at one of our events.
We'll see you at the BMW. I'm assuming you're going to the BMW Drive Day event.
Yes, I am, and I'm looking forward to witnessing your driving skills, Ed.
Oh, they are phenomenal. No, I'm actually a very good driver. I am. I must say that.
I think you let me be the judge of that one then.
Yeah, okay. You can definitely be the judge. You're starting to put the hex on me now, Duc. That's no good. All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay,
have a great day.
Thanks,
and
guys.
We'll speak soon. You've been listening to the Business Marketing Show. You can find us at businessmarketingshow.com, on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher.